we've got a lovely Gold 3 account. Number 1, Warwick Ose. Don't say his name. Don't say Ricky. His name is Steve. Sorry, there. Okay, so what can we see here? We can see you're a hard stuck gold player. Season 8, you were gold 5. Season 9, gold 2. And season 10, you're struggling to get back to season 9's past rank of gold 2. Now, Steve. Steve, the reason you are hard stuck here is because you keep playing with another summoner. And their summoner name, we won't say their summoner name, but we will say their real name. And the person is Blake. Right now, Steve, your biggest problem is queuing up with an individual called Blake who plays League of Legends. Because he is very counterintuitive to climbing in League of Legends, as we know. As we've all personally experienced, he is the number one reason his friends cannot climb in League of Legends. No, okay. Let's actually get serious. So, you've played just under 200 games, my good sir Steve. You have a 49% win ratio. Now, we can clearly see that you're not the best Warwick in OS, because I doubt the best Warwick OS would have only a 54% win ratio. But we will talk about that later. Now, clearly you're not a Warwick one trick, but you play a lot of Warwick, and the rest of your champions you pretty much soft int on, besides Nasus. Now, I've seen your Nasus personally, I've seen your Warwick personally, and your Warwick is pretty crash hot. We won't look at this game, I guess. But your Warwick is pretty hot. Now, the good thing is, in your last 20 games, you actually have a 55% win ratio. So we can probably attribute that to mainly because you've played a lot of Warwick in your last 20 games, and we know he's kind of your strongest champion. So, Steve, it kind of depends what you want to do. Again, do you just want to keep playing Warwick, or do you want to expand your champion pool? You want to get to plat this season. Okay. Do you want to get to plat this season by just playing Warwick, or do you want to expand your champion pool? No? No answer. I was legit gold 1 promos, ended up silver 1 in 1 day. That's not climbing. That's the opposite of climbing. That's falling. See, again, I already knew what your main problem is. It's duo queuing with the big Muppet. That is your main problem and why you are not climbing. It's climbing down the ladder. It is the exact opposite of what we want to do in League of Legends. I hit a few snakes. That's a good way of putting it. That is a great way of putting it. So, let's go back to you. You want to get to plat, right? So, what I would recommend is, particularly given that you're going to keep playing Warwick, you need to... I'll actually get your mobalytics up. Let me get your mobalytics up so we can dive into your Warwick a little bit deeper. Just give me a second. Talk amongst yourselves. You feel uncomfortable playing other champs in solo queue, that's fine. Just whenever you play flex, or play with mates in normals or flex queue, never play Warwick if you want to learn new champions. Always force yourself onto a champion you want to learn, or a champion you're uncomfortable with but want to get better at. Always do that in your flex queue games, always do that in normal games. Never go to your comfort picks when you're playing with mates, because... you know, who cares about flex queue rank, to be honest? But that's my opinion. If you do care about your flex queue rank, that's fine. But I know you're probably not looking to join a team or anything, or playing with a team at the moment, so your flex rank really doesn't matter. Okay, so we've got your MOBA here, which we can kind of go a bit more in depth to. So right now we can see overall, whenever you play any this entire account has a 49% win ratio, right? But when you actually play the jungle role, you have a 51.6. So that's the first one. Always queue up for jungle as your primary because it's your best role by far. Now, what do we look at next? Catch the ball fast, sir. Welcome. Yeah. Yeah. And flex queue is for fun. Everyone knows that. Anyway, so out of your 200 games or so, you've played 155 in jungle with a 51% win ratio. Now, let's go on to your KDA because it's actually a quite interesting KDA. Now, generally, what I see a lot with one tricks or players who play a lot of one champion, they generally can have a pretty good win ratio on them, but they could actually be doing a lot better on them than they can actually be doing a lot better on them than they are at the moment. So 54% win ratio is great. If you just play Warwick for the rest of the season, you would get to plat on a 54% win ratio if you play at least 100, 150 more games. Now, the problem is, obviously, as you get higher and closer to plat, your win ratio will naturally decrease unless you're getting better on that champion. You know, give or take. Like, it's better to be safe to say that you're constantly improving on the champions or champion you want to play as you get higher because you're going to be versing better people. They're not going to let you get away with the stuff that you're getting away with in your current elo. So we need to look at quick wins that we can do with Warwick in order to get you playing from a gold 3 level into a plat level, because that's obviously your goal. Steve, welcome, my good man. Wait, am I back? Can you guys hear me still? Okay, I'm back. I'm back, boys. Okay. I was just getting the chat numbers up. So Twitch knows there's not chat bots in here. So we need to start looking at some wins that we can focus on for Warwick. So the first one I want to look at is your deaths. So right now you average 5.2 deaths. Now, clearly that's a pretty high number given that you average 6.9 kills. But the biggest problem here is that when you average about 5.2 deaths a game, you're actually wasting on average 5 minutes of your game on average due to either being dead or walking back to lane or walking back to jungle camps. Now, generally I just attribute per death about 1 minute of wasted time. But what's the ideal dead amount? So generally I recommend for a gold jungler wanting to get to plat, I would recommend getting your death rate down to about 3.5 to 4 deaths per game on average. If it's any lower than that, you generally have a very low kill participation because there's a lot of risk playing jungle, and generally junglers have, besides supports, they generally have one of the highest death ratios because they're usually initiating riskier plays and have less time to calculate their plays rather than a mid laner or a top laner who's playing 3D chess with their enemy opponent. 0 is very unrealistic because that just means you have an aversion to actually getting in fights, which is a really big problem because if you're not getting in enough fights, you're not helping your team out enough. Now, 3D chess, yeah. I just wanted to drop that in case it triggered anyone. So yeah, ideally you want to get your deaths down as a priority. So how do you get your deaths down? There's a number of ways to get your... you want to get your deaths down. So there's a number of ways. The first one is get better at ganking. The second one is get better at jungle tracking, so enemy jungle tracking. These are all kind of a bit ambiguous and a bit obscure. The third one is better vision. The fourth one is identifying win conditions and playing to them, because when you know the win condition you're playing towards, you have a lot more time to calculate, plan, and execute whatever that is you want to do. Whether it's camp top lane, power farm, invade the enemy jungler. As long as you have a clear goal in mind, you're generally going to die less because you always know what you're doing and why, and therefore you're thinking more about where everyone else is on the map rather than what am I doing next. You've got that clear path, and then you can start figuring out, okay, I haven't seen the enemy jungler for a couple of minutes. I wonder where he is. You know, la 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 la. I can't think of any other examples off the top of my head. But if you have trouble, you know, tracking an enemy jungler or doing any of these things, to be honest, if you can be bothered, you should actually review your games. Even if you just want to look at every death. So I would recommend for someone like you, to be honest, review 2 games a week. And all you have to do if you want to fix... All you have to do is if you want to fix your death rate... Thank you. Thank you, kind sir. I don't... Oh, you catch the ball fast. Got it. All you have to do is look at every single death you have in that game. So you don't have to review the entire game because that's going to take too long. It's unrealistic and you're going to be super bored doing that because it's really unsustainable to try and review 2 whole games of yours a week. Particularly when you're not used to doing it. So the best way to do this would be to just watch every single death you have in a game. Watch the 60 seconds leading up to that death and start, whether it's writing down, mentally taking notes, or having a spreadsheet up on a second screen or whatever. Write down what actions or what events in that 60 seconds lead up to that death. So is it a lack of vision? Is it a lack of enemy jungle tracking? Is it going for a gank because your top laner spammed you and said, I'm gonna AFK if you don't gank me in the next 30 seconds? Is it because you were top lane, you'd cleared your top quadrant, and you're like, I may as well gank top, even though you didn't really have a reason? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you can do this on your own. The thing is, 95% of players do not do this on their own, and that is why coaches come in and force players to do it. But that's like a really easy way to fix your deaths. To be honest, you're actually a very good jungler. Besides your high deaths, your CS per minute is actually a really healthy level in relation to your kill participation. So generally, I recommend gold junglers wanting to get to platinum to have at least a 50 to 57.5% kill participation. Particularly when you have a 5.5 CS per minute, I kind of consider 5.5 CS per minute in gold/plat to be an optimal CS per minute because you don't actually want to be over farming. A lot of junglers in gold and plat over farm, and the problem with over farming is it gets you ahead, but it doesn't get your team ahead. And as we know, solo queue players are all fragile, egoed individuals who, whenever something goes wrong in their lane, they will blame the jungler. Now, obviously that's stereotyping and generalizing, but the best way to play jungle is to never over farm. You'd be much better over ganking, but because you don't really have that problem, Steve/Ricky, I won't need to really go into that any further because you have a 5.5 CS per minute in relation to a 55% kill participation. So generally, if you have a 55% kill participation, it means you're in the majority of your team's fights. And what that means is that you have more influence over the game. The higher your average kill participation, the higher outcome or influence you have on whether you win that game or you lose that game. So reducing that kind of coin flip mentality, meta, whatever you kind of want to call the coin flip dilemma at the moment in Season 10. But yeah, 55% kill participation is very good. Let's go into this, your GPI, and let's take a looky-see. We'll look at your last 100 games as a jungler. So, let's take a look at some key stats. So here are a couple of problems that we see. So when you get in duels, you tend to lose your duels. So you only have a 43% win ratio when you're in a 1v1. Now, the reason this is concerning is because Warwick is a very strong duelist. There are not really many champions traditionally that can out 1v1 a Warwick if they're in a favor or if they're in a neutral or favorable position. So it's hard to say why you're losing these duels, but generally it will be because you're taking unfavorable duels. So you're either fighting an enemy when you don't want to, or you are sitting on 2,000 gold, or you're sitting on 50% health when the enemy catches you. Now that could be to do with enemy jungle tracking. It could be to do with deep wards in your jungle. It could be to do with a variety of things. But okay, there's a big problem. So this is another one that's very hard to tell with sites like op.gg and Mobalytics, and I actually have this problem as well when I jungle. I always wait too long to actually back. Yeah, when to reset is a tough one as a jungler. So there are a couple of kind of key trigger points for when to reset. For your first clear, it's generally best to reset after you get level 3, you get a scuttle, and then you at least gank 1 or 2 lanes, then you back. Because you'll usually be able to get your jungle item. Now, now after that first back is where it kind of gets ambiguous. Generally, the biggest triggers for backing as a jungler is, as Chris has said, a gold limit. So literally, once you hit 1.5k gold, you need to start looking for an opportunity to back. So it doesn't mean back straight away, but what it means is you need to figure out, okay, I am on 1.5k gold here. Let's look and see what I can do on the map. Can I gank bot? No, they're pushed. Can I gank mid? No, they're pushed. My Krugs are up. Should I do my Krugs? No, let's leave them. Let's back. Let's go for my next power spike. Let's build towards my Cinderhulk. Let's build towards my warrior enchantment, etc., etc. Yeah, for Warwick, usually when he got enough for... You can do that. That is actually a fine strategy, particularly if you go Warwick Machete and then you go Rejuve Bead. But the problem with backing or waiting to back for 1,300 gold on your first back is that the enemy jungler will generally back before you do. So unless you get like 2 successful ganks off, actually backing on 1,300 gold as a jungler is going to take you quite a while to do. So yeah, if you get a nice snowball, if you get first blood, if you get 2 successful ganks off and you get 2 kills there, you get assist gold, you get kill gold, sure, waiting until that Tiamat back is good, but if you don't actually get any ganks off, waiting for that 1,300 gold or so to get Tiamat is actually going to take you too long, and it's going to be detrimental to your overall jungling performance, because we know that you don't really need Tiamat as a jungler. Like, it's a great item, but it's not as strong as what it used to be. And the problem with over-prioritizing a Tiamat is that you're risking having 1,300 gold in your inventory and then going for a gank when you just have your Hunter's Machete. And it's like, the enemy jungler is probably going to have their smite ready, so whether they go red smite, blue smite, they're probably going to have that on you ahead of you. And so there's a multitude of problems that can come back from that. So yes, gold limits are a good way to indicate backs. Another one is resetting. So if you reset top lane, for example, and they back, you can back as well, because generally when you gank a external lane like a top or a bot, you've usually cleared your top side quadrant or your bot side quadrant to get to that lane, and therefore there's nothing really else to do if you help that reset the lane. Hey Frizzle Fry, how you going, mate? I also notice I find it hard to gank the bot lane. Well, when you think about it, the bot lane is exactly like the top lane in terms of its structure and layout. The only thing is that there's probably more likely to be wards, and obviously it's a 2v2. So bot lane's an interesting one, and something I've actually been finding that's having a lot of success when I gank bot lane is I will get my red sweeper straight away. So I will back before minions spawn. I'll place my yellow trinket, ideally in an enemy jungle access point, so whether it's top side, bot side, enemy jungle entrance, or on an actual buff, so red buff, blue buff, and then you back before minions spawn, you switch to sweepers. Sorry, I keep facing, because I'm facing Twitch chat. You switch to sweepers, and then you keep sweepers for your first gank. So if you're wanting to gank bot, always I would recommend have your sweepers up. So whatever lane you have the most difficulty ganking, always have your sweepers up. And instead of using your sweeper to clear the ward, use your sweeper to disable the ward and walk straight through and ignore the ward. Because when you use your sweeper and you ignore the ward, they actually have a lot less vision of you. So when you use sweeper and kill a ward, every time you auto attack, you grant a brief period of visibility to the enemy team that you're killing their ward. However, if you don't actually kill the ward, if you walk straight through while your sweeper's active with it going, they have a lot less time to actually react to your gank. So it's make sure the wave is actually in a gankable position. So you got to make sure that the bot lane's either overextended, the enemy bot laner, and they're at your ally turret, or you can sneak in through the through lane into the side brushes, and then hopefully the wave bounces back. But the best way to gank when a wave is like neutral or slightly pushed in is to use your sweeper to disable the ward, not actually clear it. Because clearing the ward doesn't actually make sense if the reason you're going to clear that ward is actually so you can get a gank off. If it's just to secure vision or to protect your ally jungle bot lane, that's fine. But if it's actually to get a gank off, use your sweeper, because 9 times out of 10, well, probably like 6 to 7 times out of 10, when you're versing gold plat players, they're not actually going to notice. They're not actually going to notice you on their minimap. Typically, players have a really bad minimap awareness in gold and plat. And again, it's all chance, because you might be versing someone that's really good at looking at their minimap, or they may look at their minimap just as you walk through, etc., etc. Thanks for the donation. Chris, you're a legend. I don't know why you donated $1, but I appreciate it, sir. Oh, for a VOD review. Ah, I see. Whoops. My elastic band went off. Yeah, so that's like kind of the best way if you struggle ganking a certain lane. We all know kind of mid lane is the hardest lane to gank, but generally not going through river is the best way to gank mid lane. So if you can go through up into their enemy kind of jungle access points and kind of pincer.